Uh, Welcome, everyone. Again, I'm Dr. Willie Miles. I am the president of Dr. Willie Miles Children's Foundation, located here in Atlanta, Georgia. And we're always happy to have y'all join us every week. And I just want to let you all know that this week, we're sort of like doing a repeat of the last 2 weeks ago, because you all said you can't stop there. You got to have more conversations about this. So this is part 2 of critical race theory. But before I get into that, and I wish Jackie was not frozen, but I do want to share that in Atlanta, folk, I mean, we're experiencing the 4 seasons in one day. I mean, on Sunday, it was 70 degrees. On Monday, got a little, no, it's really 80 degrees. On Monday, it was then 60s. Today it's in the 50s. And can you believe they say we're going to get down to the 20s and possibly snow on Sunday? What kind of weather is that? All right. But at any rate, I'm just glad I'm alive to be able to experience it. So I'm not going to complain too much. I'm not going to complain too much. But I do want to share that Jackie and I were off last week. And folk, I'm telling you, I missed you all. Hey, but I really enjoyed my rest. I really enjoyed resting. So I simply just chilled on Tuesday night and got caught up on some reading and other things that I like to do. But I'm telling you all, I really missed you all, and we got a lot of calls, or at least texts, regarding to my, where are you all? To my, we didn't see you last week. I said, well, you know, we were like chilling, we're just relaxing. Jackie, you're not on yet, are you? So we're gonna keep moving. Maybe you can rejoin us, but it's your internet. But here in Atlanta, we are storming here, folk. Miss Queen, we always love to have you on. And Al Miller, who is on our Facebook group, love to have you on. The Marsh family is back. Yay! We're happy to see y'all tonight. For those folk who are new with us, we have some regulars who are always with us. And I do want to give our foster parents a plug. Foster parents who tune into us get credit for their training, for joining us. So I'm so excited that we gave out last year about 25 certificates, and very happy about that. And this year, we're hoping we give out just as many, because foster parents need the support they can get to understand the children they're working with and to also understand themselves. Children these days are different. It's so amazing, as you look on social media, you hear about these pandemic babies, about babies walking at 6 months. I said, good Lord, I don't know what that is, but anyway, that's progress. That's progress. But I do want to share that in Atlanta, our weather's kind of strange. I also want to make another appeal to you all while we're waiting on Jackie to get on here, to get back on. People, do not take your mental health lightly. Do not take your mental health lightly. Please be advised that the COVID situation, COVID means it had us under lockdown, it had restrictions from families. I have labeled that a trauma. I've labeled it a trauma. And it was traumatic for a bunch of people. And if I had my way, I say for everyone who's involved in it. And why was it trauma? A trauma is any event that is life-changing for you. A trauma is any event that is life-altering for you and causes you to react differently than you normally would. So the word normality, we're going to throw it out because there's no normal anymore, whatever normal is from our 2 years ago perspective. But folk, if you're more anxious than you were 2 years ago, get yourself checked out. And what does that mean? You're always expecting something. You're always frustrated. No one ever can do anything that you like. Well, I can hear some of these people saying, well, they were like that before the pandemic. But at any rate, but what happens is that if you are having sleepless nights, if you are having terror dreams, and especially your children now, your children may be having some experiences of anxiety and or depression, and that simply is not wanting to go to school because of this virus, not wanting to be around people. And just think, our children have been in the house for almost a year and a half. So children who were born a year and a half ago have not seen outside. A friend of mine was telling me that she took our little baby outside who was born during the pandemic, and the baby was afraid of the grass. The baby now is like a year and a half, and she was afraid of the grass. And so the key is, I want you all to know that, you know, don't take it lightly. And it's only stereotypes about, let me see, get Jack in here, about mental health. So get yourself checked out and take care of yourselves. Take care of yourselves. All right. Yeah, I don't normally say this, but I think that there's a spirit that's working with us that doesn't want Jackie on. You know, she was on she came on a week ago, and she was trying to join us tonight. She's now having problems with her, I guess, her server in Florida. But I don't want to keep y'all too long. I want to get into the topic, and hopefully Jackie will be able to join us. I want to do a recap of last week, talking about critical race theory. And what's amazing is that you all were absolutely fantastic. You had plenty of questions, and you asked those questions. So even after the show, I got plenty of questions about what is it I need to do, how can I do it, and why is our society not wanting this critical race theory stuff. And I am not going to say they don't want it. I'm going to say there is fear in accepting the reality of what happened. And there's sort of a selfishness that says, I don't care what happened to you, and I don't want anybody to know what happened to you. Let us tell your story. And there is a concerted effort across our country not to institutionalize the truth of America, the truth. And the whole point of the truth is so that everyone, all children, all families can then come together and understand that America was built on the back of people who were then labeled slaves. And so Black people who were labeled slaves have just as much right to everything in this country, in this wonderful country, as anyone else. And that's what this critical race theory is. But it really is saying that, let's take a look at how race has impacted all of our institutions in the past, and how race still impacts institutions of today. The controversy is, from one set of views, is that if we tell people, if we allow this story or this theory to be institutionalized, it will cause division. Well, I grabbed my head and said, cause division? Well, aren't we already divided? Maybe it will bring us more together. But there's a belief, and folk, it's across the country, that if critical race theory is taught, it will further polarize America. My comment really is that we're already polarized. And so it's not as if these things are not happening, and there's a fear. And for those who were not on last week, those who were really against critical race theory being taught stated one of the reasons was they did not want to impact their children. And our comment on 2 weeks ago was, so you don't want your children impacted. However, it's okay for Black children and their families to have experienced it and still experiencing it to be impacted. So in other words, where the divisiveness comes in is that white children should be protected, not Black children. Because don't forget, you're still just 2/3 human. You know, I find myself not apologizing to our audience, because I have a very sophisticated audience. both black, white, Latino, and from the islands. You're very sophisticated. You're smart. So I don't have to do disclaimers like, because I like black people don't mean I hate white. Are you with me? I'm not even do that because we're intelligent. Critical race theory, entire purpose is to make sure that we institutionalize the American story from all perspectives. From all perspectives. And in our subject line, I said that whites say no to critical race theory. It further hurts the development of black children. Well, the people who've been against it, to my knowledge, I haven't surveyed everybody, have been primarily white. And they've been policymakers. And so, folks, if you're really for equality, if you're really for the truth of America, you need to talk to your state representatives and ask them, why are they so hard fast against critical race theory? Jackie and I tonight, we're going to look at several states and what those several states have done. About 32 states have already banned it. Can you believe that? They have banned critical race theory. About 30, I think it's 37 states. Those states said, you can't talk about it in our schools. You can't even mention it because it will hurt children. It will hurt other children. Well, I don't buy that. What I do buy is there's a group of Americans who don't want the story of this country to get out. And one thought was from the whites who I know, well, not necessarily who I know, but who are the ones who are opposing. They say it will make white children look like villains. And I said, how pathetic. So you're saying that white children are not smart enough to understand history? Of course they are. What they're not gonna like, though, is that you're lying to them and you kept them in a bubble that said they were white and privileged. And don't try to mix with anybody. Don't try to get to know other cultures because they're less than you are. Now, of course, no one's going to come out and say it like that, but guess what? How you view is in the laws you approve. And each state representative represents a body of people. So if your state representative voted against it, they're saying that you are against it. So let's talk more about this. And we're recapping from last week. We're talking about what critical race theory is. We're talking about what the white perspective is. And the white perspective is that it will cause white children to feel bad about themselves. But it's okay for black children to feel bad about themselves. They don't want the truth about America. They don't want the truth that over 8 million Africans died during the Middle Passage. And the Middle Passage was the trip, the kidnapping from Africa across the ocean to get them to the Western world. 8 million Africans lost their lives. 8 million. That is the truth. They do not want their children to know about slavery. What they want children to know about is from the point where Dr. Martin Luther King came on the scene. Nothing before then. They don't want their children to know about the terrorism that they exhibited. They want their kids to know about the torment and rape that occurred of Black people while in the custody of white people. They don't want their white children to know about the murders they exhibited. And they don't want their children to start seeing a correlation from those days to present, because those children are going to say, there's no difference. You're still terrorizing Black folk. You're still profiling Black people. So this whole thought of critical race theory has nothing to do with equality and liberty for all. What it has to deal with is one perspective wanting to tell their story from their perspective, and they want it to be the only story. So what they want everyone to buy into their story. They don't want information, and it's factual information, folk, about why it occurred. Why did they go to Africa, and why did they bring people over here on the ships for 4 and 5, 6 months, shackled like cattle, treated inhumanely, and then sold? So, see, the problem is that when we start talking about morality, there is a conflict between you talking about what's moral and your actions. Are y'all with me? So I'm giving you this history because it's important that the intelligent of us see behind what's really happening legislatively. They have banned critical race theory in 37 states that says it cannot be taught. So 37 states have agreed to keep America in bondage, censored, and living a lie, with no regard to the people who know the real story, who were there. Your grandparents, my grandparents. And then they don't respect us enough to think that we would be able to communicate to our children and help our children in education understand what happened back then. And least they forget. Because today's freedom doesn't mean free. Are you all with me? So I'm painting a picture of what CRT is. So when you hear about it on the news, you won't be saying, oh, Black folk want something else. Well, Black folk don't want anything else. Black folk deserve a whole lot more. Folk, there are places in our country that Black folk still can't go. There are places in our country that Black people still can't go. Jackie's still trying to get on. If you can hear me, Jackie, you're not being approved. I'm not sure what you're going to need to do to get on, but I'm pushing accept, and it's just not happening. All right, so you may have to try some other venue to get on. The question is, many are asking, is why do they want to talk about it now? And in the midst of all the unarmed Black killings, in the midst of it, Jackie, we hear you. Can you hear us? Okay, I'm going to keep moving. The why now. The George Floyd killing was a pivotal point in our history that said that we're still not human. We're still not human to allow a human being to kill an individual and hear him die. And I can't say treating us worse than a dog, because they wouldn't even treat a dog that way. So I'm not here to bring doomsday stuff to us and sadness. What I'm here to do tonight is to educate us on what is happening. For anyone who rejects this, You're simply rejecting the truth. You're rejecting the truth.
Dr. Miles, are you able to hear me?
I can hear you. I can't see you, but you have to just join on at this point.
I think I'm just going to have to join on at this point. I'm listening. Again, having technical difficulties. I really need to speak to AT&T about that, but
that's another story. But
let's continue.
We can hear you, but you look like you're in the dark. So do you have your screen light on?
I'm actually broadcasting remote, as I mentioned, and the problem was trying to get internet access that would allow me to be on, and this is where I was able to get it. So
well, we can see an image of you, so we ain't gotta see your own guest. We can see a lighter image now. So let's proceed, because I don't want to spend a lot of time on the technical part of it. Ready?
But you can. Ready.
So Jackie, what I'm doing, I'm actually giving sort of a purview of what happened last week. For those who just came on. And I also that this is not sadness, it's just education. It's just education. What I'm sharing is why white people don't. And they're the ones who are opposing it. So I can't say Latinos, maybe a few of them are, I don't know. But I know when I look at the legislature, they are Republican run in most of these states, and the predominant number of them are white. And since they represent districts that representing your voice, they are saying that you all do not, wherever you live, do not want critical race theory. And what they're saying is that the only thing you want taught in those schools is the white perspective.
Right, and Dr. Miles, I think our research is, very important in case we have some new people on, in terms of really being clear about what critical race theory is, right? The idea that race does and has always played an important role in United States history. And so that's an indisputable fact. Yet, to your point and the point that of the arguments being made, for some reason, we don't want to talk about that in our schools. If you think about it, Dr. Mouse, what we're really saying is that we don't want to talk about American history in American schools. Jackie, and that's pretty shocking.
Let's call it what it is. It's not we don't want it. It is white Americans don't want it. That's what the issue is.
Well, this is true.
So, I said before, we don't have to sugarcoat things here. Our viewers that are on there are intelligent, they are smart, and they are not so sensitive where you can't mention black and white. So let's just call it what it is. All right, that's the situation.
The whole conversation really boils down to that.
Mm-hmm.
Why we're fighting the teaching of American history, who's against teaching very simple, very basic American history, factual American history, that in fact, Dr. Miles, I think we would all agree on. I think we would all agree that the Civil War occurred. Even if we disagreed over the reasons, because there are theories out there that say it was not about slavery, we could still discuss the different theories about why the Civil War occurred. We can discuss the fact, because it is documented, it's not a debate, it's not questionable, that the enslavement of humans was part of the American culture, economic system, social system, and legal system. So one really has to question, what is that debate when it comes to teaching, what they've now packaged as critical race theory?
Well,
and what is the opposition?
Well, the opposition is racism. That's the opposition. It's racism. And we defined racism before. The question was, can blacks be racist? And we decided that, guess what? Blacks can't be racist. All they can do is not like people, because they don't impact anybody's livelihood or anybody's career or anybody's where they live at or where they work at.
Or the bigger economic and social engines of this country.
Exactly.
That is a requirement.
So here we are, Jackie, in the 21st century. Here we are today, talking about critical race theory. And Jackie, I'm going to share with them, I'm not sure you heard this, but I simply gave them a real good overview of all of that, a very good overview of all that, and the whys. I recapped what we did 2 weeks ago. And I recapped also that there are some systems now that says, we don't want it. And Jackie, in one state, ready for this right here?
Mm-hmm.
About a few minutes, they said they don't want any mention of it, intentionally or unintentionally. So teachers are avoiding teaching that part of history totally.
And you know what's also interesting about that, Dr. Miles, is that there are laws on the books of the Department of Education in every state in the country that require the teaching of quote unquote African American history. So I guess now we're going to contradict those laws because we can't teach certain parts of African American history.
Exactly. And that's, you're exactly right. And I think what they're wanting to see happen, they want to see Dr. King marginalized. And just talk about him now, because things start getting better. So when things started getting better, and the better to them was worse for us.
Right.
You know,
and you make a very good point. It really is about only talking about what a certain group of the population wants to talk about. And to say that there are reasons for not wanting to be real and to be honest with American students and really the American society are selfish is an understatement. I mean, very often when people of color bring up slavery, we are told, well, what's your problem? You were never enslaved. So why does that not apply on the reverse? What's your problem with hearing about the enslavement of Africans when you were not the people who quote unquote did it?
Right.
So it is quite peculiar, Dr. Miles.
Well, Jackie, what I want to do also, I want to make sure that we keep saying this, that this is a program that deals with families, children being our priority. And Jackie, I think, and my audience, our audience knows how I feel about this. Anything that prevents children from being their best, and this is one of them, guess what? I'm totally against it. And that means you're against children. So I'm not trying to do a...
And Dr. Miles, I want to point out with your statement, because I believe I know you well enough to say this, we mean all children. We mean that this does not create wellness for white children. This does not create wellness for Black children. This does not create wellness for anyone when we are not being honest with our children. It's the same as when we would tell a parent, you cannot build a solid relationship with your child by lying to them. So America cannot expect to build a solid relationship with the next generation and have them be able to go forward and move our country forward if we're simply going to lie to them about our history.
Jackie, you know something, what I talk about often is that this has been a generational lie that has...
Absolutely.
And Black folks should not feel ashamed of talking about it, because we're just talking, and we're just talking. And white people need to be receptive to it, because what happens is that everyone gets healed. You can't solve the problem until you admit that there was one. And if you don't admit there was a problem, that means only one person had the issue. And so,
and then Dr. Miles, let me throw this in here, and I know I'm going to be a little bit off topic with this. Why is it that no one fights the Jewish community when they insist on keeping their experience and their history forefront of everyone's mind? Jewish, Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, non-Hispanic, everyone.
but just think that the Jewish experience and the Holocaust did not occur on American soil.
But again, there you have it. So it really goes back to very selfish, very self-serving reasons. And it makes the point that this has nothing to do with truth or honesty, but the feelings and the preferences of a select group.
You know, this is kind of, I'm going way out there when I do this, when I say this right here. And by no means, you know, I love America. I do. And we have so many privileges here and we've contributed so much. But, you know, when I start looking at the analogy, for instance, I look at Putin, right? Russia. He tells his people that you're going to jail if you say anything like, if you say war, you're going to jail for 17 years. He cuts off all media. Then I look at our legislature who said, you better not even mention this race stuff now. Intentional or unintentional.
Exactly.
So I'm saying.
Exactly.
Do you,
Well, I mean, if you want to do that, we've also been banned now in certain states from protesting, because we can also go to jail now for protesting. Now, if that's not taking us back to Selma, Alabama, and the bridge situation, so many things are brought to light with this conversation on critical race theory, when in fact it's not a theory.
but Jackie, that's the point of all this. The point of this teaching is to show people how racism is institutionalized across the board. I mean, justice system, all systems. And all,
Which is a reality and a fact that, again, that same population has never wanted to acknowledge. And I'll be honest with you, I am perplexed by that. You wanted the system, you had the system all the way through the Supreme Court. You legalized the enslavement of human beings. Okay? It took a war on American soil to end the enslavement of human beings. So we know it happened. But now you don't want to talk about it.
well, so what's so amazing to me is that, and then I want to get onto the states because we're going to run out of time, right?
Always.
The people who were against Black people and said they were inhumane, and not inhumane, were not humans, but allowed us to cook their food and their babies suckled from our women who had babies.
From our very bodies, the fluid from our bodies.
So the question, so I think that's the part where those who are against it don't want their children to know. And not only that, but that lasted for generations. Jackie, my mother was a maid. My mother was a maid, and the white woman's name was Miss Williams. I'll never forget it. She paid my mother $25 a week, but she would come pick her up. My mother had to get in the back seat of the car. And I guess what? She was a nurse. I think her husband was a doctor or something, but she was a very nice white lady. I mean, she made sure at Christmas time we got a few little gifts and when they leftover food, that kind of stuff. So my point is that today's children, they would see that, they would say, unbelievable. But see, that's when the country begins to heal.
Yes, Dr. Miles. And, you mentioned your mother having been a maid. I have often told people, being from Mississippi, that I could almost bet that my grandmother would have been one of the real maids featured in the movie The Help. It's based in Jackson, Mississippi. The maids worked in the northern part of Jackson, Mississippi. And so we know that we have that experience there. So it's only when our voice comes to the table that there is some truth brought out. But I think what, critical race theory keeps bringing up and keeps sustaining is the fact that those who enacted probably the worst atrocity on human beings probably in the history of the world let me correct that. The descendants of those who executed the most inhumane treatment of other human beings for more than 2 centuries, their descendants, Dr. Miles,
right,
are not willing to have the conversation.
What's interesting, Jackie, as we talk about this, and there are some who said that this is an academic discussion, but be taught in K-12. So what is K-12?
Right. Dr. Miles, I'm going to be honest with you. The only support I give them for that, and I've raised this issue, and should we win this fight in some way or at some point, which I doubt we will, we do need to be very careful about who would be teaching this critical race theory and whether or not they would be trained to do so.
Well, guess what? To me, that's after the horse. We just got to get it done first, and we'll deal with that when that occurs. I mean, I'm really concerned about I'm not against Republican, Democrat, and all that kind of stuff. I'm just saying who's leading the charge right now. And the charge is to get every state house with a majority of Republicans. That's just a plan, people. So they can block everything that moves this country forward from another person's perspective. From their perspective, they're maintaining the status quo of centuries past.
Well,
Are you
we had a president who stepped into office and ran for office based on moving our country backwards.
Yeah.
That was his platform. He received incredible support, continues to receive incredible support. So the real question is, and I think it's a question many of us are afraid in some ways to deal with, who is America? What is America and what is American? We made so much progress, clearly, and we've been proud of that. The election of our first Black president proved that America could move beyond its past. But there's clearly still elements, there are clearly elements in members of our society who not only don't want to move forward, they want to actively move backwards. That is where I think we have great concern, because critical race theory is only one component of moving backwards, or the absence of critical race theory in our education system. That's only one element. We're also seeing that we're losing voting rights and privileges, right?
Yeah. Well, Jackie, the thing about it is that, this topic is one that I used to be very emotional about, but decided that I have to remove emotion and make wrong decisions. So that's to be an intelligent discussion. That's what we're having tonight. We're actually communicating. But I've only seen Miss Queen make some comments, and Janae makes comments, and I see Deborah West has joined us on our Facebook group, and also Al Miller, Mark watching up. But give us some of your thoughts. I mean, is what we're saying, is it making sense? Is it? Do you think it's biased? I mean, give us some feedback. And while you're doing that, Jackie, let's look at what's happening state by state. I just want to deal with Georgia first. I'm in Georgia. Members of the Georgia Board of Education voted 11-2 to pass a resolution joining several other state school systems to ban teaching on race. And their sort of thought on this is that they're going to ban anything that says one race was better than the other, or one race did something for another, and to prevent divisiveness.
Well, I tell you what, Dr. Miles, they're going to shut down the schools, because what's being overlooked is that racism is so ingrained in our culture. They may as well go ahead and say ban teaching about the Black race, because teaching about the white race is inherent in our system. So that means you cannot teach that Thomas Edison, invented the light bulb, since you don't want to talk about the person, an African of African descent, whose element allowed him to invent. So at this point, we can't teach it.
And so, in other words, you most certainly can't. But the thing about it is that, well, I'll tell you some of my thoughts on this too. Is that I've always said that we should not depend upon an educational system to do what parents ought to be doing. And so some of these teachings ought to be happening at home. But at
early ages.
But the whole point of institutionalizing it is to show the impact that race has on how judges make decisions, how police make decisions, how financial institutions make decisions, how restaurants make decisions, how realtors make decisions. So this is not anything new to us. And Jackie, but it's like everybody wants to walk around like with their head in the sand saying, "Bye, y'all, we're all Americans." And there's equality and liberty for all.
Right. And I do see comments from Janae, and I think Janae is absolutely correct. This is another big one, Dr. Miles. And just as we want to raise, the concern over whether or not truth, and I'm going to call critical race theory truth, racial truth in this country is taught in schools, we also need to step up as a community and take responsibility for educating our children. Now, the fact that we would depend on others, especially those whom we already know fight our education in general, let alone in any forms of excellence. We're going to depend on them to teach our future and
Yeah.
to teach our children.
Right.
So there's a lot of conversations that this brings out, and a lot of conversations to be had on how children learn about race and culture in America.
Yeah, I want to read some of the comments from our Facebook folk, and it says, racism is prevalent throughout American society, and it needs to stop. And we totally agree, but it's been about 400 years, and it's not going to stop until the truth, until the lies.
Right.
Jackie, I have a goal tonight, and we're running out of time. I really, if you can see what I've sent you, I want to do how the states are dealing with. So I want our audience to lead with, it ain't just Georgia now. I want you to hear some of these ridiculous things from my perspective that these state legislators are saying the reasons why. Jackie, are you able to see any of that on your prompter?
I'm trying to look at some of it now, how the
I'll
states are looking at it. I've got the members of the Georgia board, which you just shared.
Let's do it.
Go ahead.
Do it, Florida. And Jackie's in Florida. And Jackie, your state legislature said a new bill in Florida would ban public schools and private businesses from making people feel uncomfortable.
Discomfort. Can you imagine the term? You know, Ms. Queen brought up a good point that touches that and all of this. What happened to the freedom of speech that was afforded Trump and his supporters? What happened to freedom of speech?
Let me read a little bit more, because you can comment on it. It says, and this is in Florida now, an individual shouldn't be made to feel discomfort, guilt, anguish, or any form of psychological distress on the account of his or her race, color, sex, or national origin.
And where was that thought when Ruby Bridges was going to school? I mean, really? Did they really say that?
But it's for white children.
But they didn't say white children. They said any person. I mean, Ruby Bridges is not a person.
Well, no.
She was allowed to be spit on by adults, attacked.
Hold on, Coach. You're going too fast. You asked a question. I'm going to answer it. The issue is that no, she's not a person. And Black people are still not persons. That's why we're treated the way we're treated by their definition.
That is a hard and tough reality, Dr. Miles. But unfortunately, you're correct. That is exactly correct. I do want to share something, Dr. Miles. You often ask about news. I do want to share that we are finding out tonight that we are sending Dr. Rosalind Osgood to Tallahassee to fight on our behalf as our newest elected state senator from District 23. And when I tell you, she's definitely prepared for this fight. And we need to be doing this across the country, getting the right people in the right positions, because this is a new fight.
Jackie?
This is civil rights 2022.
Jackie, as long as there is a in those houses, nothing changes. All right? That's 32 states have already began to ban some things. Now we're in Texas, Jackie. GOP-backed House Bill 3979 makes Texas the 22nd state to prohibit critical race theory from the curriculum. But in Texas, they said, well, you're going to teach it. You can teach some of this stuff, but guess what? We're going to outline it for you. We're going to teach it.
Insanity.
So Jackie, now we can more. I want to get the people the 3 states, but understand there are 37 states to have the same language. That's 37 states, Jackie, who has resoundingly said Black folk history in America does not matter. We gave you a month. You better be happy with that.
No, but guess what, Dr. Miles? You know, since they're saying it, does this mean that they're going to change the history books? Because the history books clearly state that whites were superior. The history books clearly make Black children uncomfortable, give us discomfort. So are we, along with this, let's not do this, which, I mean, of course, they're submitting as we don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. Okay, where's the money to change the books that have been hurting the feelings of people of African descent for centuries. I mean, Dr. Miles, this could be good if they actually applied it both ways.
Well, America is not designed to apply anything
Both
both,
ways.
right? It is
Thank you, Dr.
a
Miles.
capitalistic society that has its view on who should be successful and who should not. What we have to applaud is that Africans who were brought to this country, not as immigrants, who were brought here, have prospered in the midst of culture being taken away, in the midst of history being taken away, in the midst of having to learn another language, and in the midst of surviving terroristic acts. And today, those who have achieved still have to report out. They still experience racism because institutions have not changed sufficiently.
And Dr. Miles, with that said, I think we also need to remember how America and why America did move forward when it did. We have to remember that it was only international scrutiny and judgment and hypocrisy that swept Jim Crow under the rug, because America was embarrassed. We have to know that it was jailing children, because it was not the adults who were able to get that done. And I say this because we have to now ask the question, what is it going to take? I'm not even referring to critical race theory anymore. What is it going to take for America to teach the truth? That's the new name for critical race theory, the truth.
Well, what it's going to take is what I do in therapy, that people have to self-actualize, and the only way they self-actualize, they have to hit rock bottom. So America will not tell the truth until it hits rock bottom. I think we're close to it. So
exactly, there were economic sanctions before. You're absolutely correct.
Let's be clear. We're not anti-American. We're probably more pro-American, so we have more invested in this country just as anyone else.
And let's remove the probably, because we are about supporting everyone's children, not just children of color, because we believe they all need to know the truth. Like I said, we are American. We are very much pro-American. We are Americans. Let's be clear on that.
I want to read some of these things, our comments. Al says, Jim Crow policies are alive today. And I agree that we need more Democrats because Republicans are against Black people. Well, I'm going to say that not just Democrats, we need the right Democrats, because we have Democrats in Congress right now who are more conservative than some of the Republicans are.
I want to add to that as well, Dr. Miles. As people of color, the point you made about let's not make it a Democrat or Republican issue is valid. As people of color, we need to be represented on every side. We need to have a vote on who is running on the Republican Party and who is not, who is running on the Democratic Party and who is not. Because when it comes to the elections that matter, your party doesn't matter.
Well, Jackie, you know what's so interesting about this? And we're going to talk about this briefly, and then we're going to keep it moving. I keep saying keeping it moving. But Jackie, you know the history shows that at one point in history, there were more Black Republicans than whites. And because they had a conservative agenda, the conservative agenda was about saving, not wasting, and about and more, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly. It was about less government. It was also the Republican Party, as much as we don't like to acknowledge it now, that freed the slaves, reluctantly or otherwise. So we cannot afford to be one-dimensional, politically speaking.
Well, we're going to say that was back in them days. The Republicans said throughout the years, and it has to do with generations also. We've got a lot of people who are, they won't say it, who are just racist.
But as you point out, let's not think for one moment that we don't have racist Democrats.
Yeah.
Some of those people out there carrying these flags, some of those people going to the KKK meetings are registered Democrats.
I can't prove that now, but I don't look. I don't know whether they're going to KKK meetings, but I do know that their policies speak for themselves.
Exactly.
The policies speak for itself. And the policies have not been one that would help Black people, but it's marginalized Black people. And it's also to victimize Black people further. You mentioned the Voting Rights Act. It's not just that. It's all the institutions. It's all of them. It's all of them.
And Dr. Miles, see, but that's, and maybe this is a note we can close on, and maybe this is our next conversation. We know the truth. The question is, what do we do about it?
Well, and the other part of that question is, are we willing to take the risk? Because the problem is that the people who are the policymakers, they then do what they did back in slavery. In slavery, when a slave ran away, they'd catch him, and then they would either castrate him or hang him on a tree and split him in half and have his family watch. And so the lesson was, if you do this stuff, the same thing's going to happen to you. So here we are today in modern America, the same thing happens. If you go against the grain, they say you call blacklist. They don't call it a blacklist for nothing.
And guess what? They were afraid of losing the little to nothing they had. Of course, today we have people who are afraid of losing all that they think they have, because you don't really understand that you don't own it anyway.
Well, I look at I'm going to try to stay a little bit focused, but you have to look at the mindset also of the generations. The mindset for many people of color today is a dangerous mindset. Is that if I ask our young people, they'll say racism doesn't exist. And they'll
exactly, but that was by design.
Of course.
They taught our children to look the other way, turn the other cheek, and hey, let's look at the progress made. But, and excuse me, Dr. Miles, I'm probably going to lose connectivity soon.
And I think you're losing. I think you're losing connectivity.
I was afraid of that. I don't know if you heard my last comments.
No, we did not.
I said, while they told our children that all was well and that we're all one big happy family, they were raising 18-year-olds who are driving around with Confederate flags.
Well, even I mentioned a 2 weeks ago meeting, Francis Scott Key, who wrote the Star Spangled Banner, was racist. He had slaves.
And the other verses of that are clearly racist.
Yeah, so again, I think that's probably the fear of the other side, that if it is actually ever discovered that American history
is a lie, what does that make us?
It would cause a problem.
Well, I think that your last president did a good job of taking the lid off the box.
Well, the thing about it, what's so amazing about that, when the lid was on, it was a little bit controlled because we didn't get all this backlash. But what has happened is that he's saying that critical race theory, I'm not saying he said it verbally, right, but his action shows that, guess what? He believed the same thing. But check out the counter reaction to that. They'll say that president did more for us because he funded HBCUs. And I'm saying,
Dr. Rouse, you're throwing me overboard on that.
There's more than funding the HBCU. That, for those who don't know, historically Black colleges and universities.
Right, but you funded it in the front door and cut it at the back door. Let's keep this real.
All right, folks, I mean, tell you, it is, I'm not sure we're going to continue this particular topic. We're going to move to some other topics. But I want you all to think that each time we have this discussion with you, we put a lot of time and energy into it. And I wish I could have other guests on and have y'all log in. I really hope that you're benefiting from this, because my goal and our goal is to make sure that you're educated. Make sure you're educated on things that are important, And to hear that critical race theory should not be taught, because it will make white children feel like villains, but it's okay to have Black children to feel inferior.
For centuries, 400 4 centuries thus far.
All right, we got a few more minutes. We'll take a few more comments from you all, more comments from our audience. Jackie, I think these are the kind of topics, people are afraid to talk about because it causes some kind of negative energy. I keep saying, guess what? Doesn't cause negative energy with me, because guess what? I know that I know.
Well, I tell you what, also, Dr. Miles, while we are concerned, we had better remember that somebody did this for us 150 years ago, or we wouldn't be having these conversations today.
Well, the other thing too, just look at other countries, what other countries do to other countries.
Yes.
When you don't matter, people bomb you. When people want power over you, they'll destroy you.
Exactly. And if we are not a united front, and we are, of course, very much approaching that, we are vulnerable as a country. And it amazes me that people of all color don't realize that when they come for an American, they don't really care what color you are.
Well, the thing about it, I think what America has is an image problem. And the image problem is hypocrisy. In other words, you can't tell me what to do abroad when you're doing worse to your people on your own soil.
Yes. And again,
it may not be dropping bombs, but it's dropping financial bombs. It's dropping health bombs. It's dropping police bombs. It's destroying a culture of people. And of course, it's sort of premeditated because people misinterpret, I'm not gonna go there, Bible. It says
and here's
the poor shall be with you always, but what's going to be the same for people for generations.
And Dr. Miles, if you can still hear me, the one word you left out, it's inhumane.
It is just inhumane.
It's inhumane.
So Jackie, we made it through another week. I mean, this was a needed discussion, and there should be more of it. And I think what we're going to do, Jackie, is throughout the month we're going to bring it up. And, the point is, people, guess what? You may say, well, Dr. Miles, why keep talking about it when it's a done deal? Never give up. Never get up. Never give up.
And it is from talking that ideas and actions take place.
This is an American tragedy of hypocrisy, censorship, and it truly is un-American.
Yep.
Right. So, hey, it's been great, folk. I hope we've helped you understand what critical race theory is. This is part 2. There will not be a part 3 next week. We're going to move on to the other topics. I know some parents are wanting to hear about their children, and what they want to talk about, how to better serve them and how to keep lives in order. When I first came on, folks, protect your mental health. And I'm going to say, if you're Black and white, we have issues that mental health is crazy. Well, you can't solve the problem until you admit what's going on. So let's go get these mental health checkups. We get the physicals. Let's get the mental health checkup to make sure that we're all well. Because people got a long fight. I'm tired of fighting, though. I told a friend today, I said, 35 years ago, I had the very same conversation. 35 years ago. And we're still
amazing.
Jackie.
And unfortunately, Dr. Miles, we'll probably be talking about this 35 years from now.
Well, I really hope not. Jackie, I want to thank you for coming on. I really hope that your internet, we got to do something about that because
I just don't know what to say.
Because your input is valuable to us, and we need to have you on. And thank you for being on, making it happen. For all the viewers that came on tonight, listen, folks, we appreciate you all. We're going to see you next week, same time, same place. And I'm not going to be reporting there's snow here in Atlanta on Sunday, even though I'm worried about this.
Okay.
Right? And listen, folks, be blessed. It was great having y'all on. See you next week.
As always, it's been a pleasure, Dr. Miles. Good night, everyone.